Prepare to die, a phrase synonymous with the Dark Souls series after a combination of its extremely subtle marketing campaign, and the fact the fanbase only really has like maybe 3 jokes that it cycles between constantly. As a result, people everywhere now associate all of FromSoft's library with misery, depression, Sunny D, and a constant feeling of inadequacy, which is just a little bit weird considering that the games are actually about empowerment. I can understand why people would not really get that message, given that the series is called Dark Souls. It's a pretty edgy name, makes me think of mall samurais personally, which is not really something that I would associate with power. And then this is further compounded by the game's art style, which, while capable of being quite radiant at times, is definitely a little more on the gothic side. The way that the story is conveyed to the player in-game is also less than ideal when it comes to getting messages across like that. Upon killing the final boss of one of the Souls games for the first time, I wouldn't be surprised to hear you say something to the effect of, "So who was that guy I just killed exactly?" Which is obviously a shame, for a lot of reasons, but the biggest of them is that certain reveals in the games are actually very emotional. But you need to have consulted with 12 trained Dark Souls lore experts to understand half the context necessary to know why they are so emotionally charged. I think Dark Souls 2 overall might have been better received if more people knew why walking into a room and seeing this guy is actually fucking heartbreaking. There's also the perception of the game's difficulty, which is probably the biggest reason that people don't think the games are actually all that empowering. A fairly common remark that you heard about the game early on in their lifespan was that Dark Souls was a game that didn't want you to beat it. That particular phrase isn't so popular anymore. It's kind of been replaced with "it doesn't care if you beat it," but either way I think that shows what most people think about the game overall. One that still does get used a lot is "tough but fair." That's pretty popular still to this day. Which, I mean, it's better, but still not great in my opinion. Dark Souls is definitely capable of being unfair, just look at this, and that's one of many examples. No, I think we should probably stop pretending that the games are a perfectly fair experience like that. For the player, or even the AI, if we're being honest. I also think we should probably stop pretending that the games are actually even that hard to begin with. That's gonna sound pretty rich coming from the bitch that has beaten every game in the series, but I've got no interest in being like, "Oh, come on dude, you think it's hard? Pfft, was easy for me." No, what you realize when you spend more time playing the Souls series, and FromSoft's library in general really, is that they aren't particularly demanding in terms of mechanical skill, with the exception of Sekiro. But if you put Souls combat next to DMC's combat, it's pretty much undeniable which one has more demanding combat. But people don't really pump Devil May Cry up as being all that difficult, at least not compared to the same monolithic degree that people do for Dark Souls. No, you see, the Dark Souls series only really asks 2 things of you to succeed for the most part, and they are things that everybody is capable of doing. One is that you are observant, and the other is that you are persistent, and that's kind of it, really. Neither of those are particularly demanding outside of a time investment. Most areas and bosses in Dark Souls, Sekiro, and probably Elden Ring, but I wouldn't know about that, can be beaten through sheer attrition alone. Typically, each encounter has some kind of catch, something that makes it hard to adapt to on the spot, but once you've seen it, you can adjust for it, and that makes the encounter much more accommodating. We need look no further than the first boss to see a prime example of this catch in action. Most players walking through this fog gate for the first time will just blindly walk across the bridge and then go, "Oh well, this guy seems friendly." Then they begin the fight, only to realize that above the gate they walked through, there are 2 camping noobs waiting to shoot you in the back once the fight does start. So you probably die, but then you come back, and now you know that you have to gank those assholes before tackling the furry of the keep. Many encounters are like this. They're often half combat challenge and half puzzle, and most of them actually have multiple valid solutions instead of just the one outlined here. Something I never really see get brought up by people about Dark Souls is the fact that the difficulty is actually pretty malleable right now as it is. See, I'm of the opinion that Dark Souls does, in fact, already have a difficulty select. It's just that it's not plastered on the main screen, so people don't really get it. But there are actually a number of things you can do to make the game easier. The most obvious example is the fact that the weapons and armor you choose have a massive impact on the game's difficulty. The series as a whole tends to be much easier if you use a ranged build. This does vary a little from game to game just how strong the ranged builds are, of course, and even then some encounters will still be a real bitch, but in aggregate, using a build that keeps the enemy in a different postal code to you tends to be easier. Another classic is the spear and shield, because you can block while you are attacking, significantly reducing the risk to you, and certain armors can make you basically invincible. That's even optimal to do in some situations, like when you're fighting the Four Kings, who you can just straight up face tank if you got the right set of armor. Then there's good old-fashioned jolly cooperation. The hardest parts of the game are, naturally, the boss fights, but those are also the easiest challenges to circumnavigate, because summoning as a mechanic exists with the bosses in mind. They do technically get stronger per additional phantom that you summon to help, but this is far, far outweighed by the advantage that having one or two extra bodies brings. You can, effectively, have someone else tank the boss for you, and then, fuck it, you don't even need to engage the boss anymore. You can let the phantoms fight it for you while you chuck spells, arrows, or words of encouragement at them. It's a little peculiar to me that the two biggest memes that center around Dark Souls, difficulty and jolly cooperation, are opposed to each other in this way. The mere existence of summoning as a mechanic actually does reduce the game's difficulty. It's strange that the most insufferable people in the fanbase never seem to complain about this though, but if you mention an easy mode, then they're gonna throw their nuggies all over the room in a blind rage. I'm sure if I asked them why summoning is okay, they would say something like, well, because you can choose not to summon phantoms, which, seems like you could probably apply it to some other mechanics as well, but anyway, that's enough straw manning for now, let's move on. So, having said all of that about the game's difficulty though, there is still some level of mechanical skill required to complete them. You do need to still be able to dodge certain attacks, react to certain things appropriately in the moment, etc., etc. It's not completely free of it. But what I'm trying to say is that Dark Souls is not as hard as people tell you that it is. Do not listen to the people who say the games are insanely difficult. Do not listen to the people who talk about its oppressive atmosphere. Don't even listen to the game's own tagline. Dark Souls is actually a game that wants you to beat it, but it also needs you to prove that you want to beat it. It's easy to miss this because of the impenetrable diamond wall that is the game's lore, but the entire series is actually about rising up from the dregs of society to topple the powers that are themselves ruining the world. The only reason you get anywhere in Dark Souls 1 is that some guy is literally just randomly going around letting people out of their prison cells, hoping that one of them turns out to somehow be the chosen one who will save the world. Hell, in Dark Souls 3, the game literally opens by telling you that you are the last resort desperation option for this. All the people who are supposed to be doing their jobs right now have buggered off to do other extremely important things, like fucking their own brother and being a snake. You, an Ashen One, are just a bunch of people that are woken up en masse in hopes that one of you will do something. These are bleak scenarios at the start of the game. The world is literally ending right now. The gods have abandoned us, and no one thinks that anybody can do anything to stop it. But despite that, you will go from being a nameless nobody to killing every single powerful entity that is left, up to and including the gods of this world. I cannot think of a story that is more clearly about the empowerment of the downtrodden and forgotten. I think that, in a lot of ways, Dark Souls is analogous to overcoming depression. Things seem bleak and hopeless, nothing matters, and you along with the world have basically just completely given up. And it's easy to see why that's the case. That's just the simpler path. The amount of work and self-sacrifice necessary to fix this dying world is just unimaginable. Multiple people prior to you have tried to save it, but failed spectacularly, and only really made the situation worse for everyone. Things are so dire that you cannot see the goal from the starting line. It's that far away. Despite that, though, you can make a difference in this world. You can still rise up from where you are right now, rotting in a jail cell, and do something about it. The road to do so is not short, and it's not easy. You're gonna fall, you're going to be afraid, and you're gonna get hurt. Doesn't matter how many times you fall down, though, you can always get back up and try again. Every failure is an opportunity to learn. Perseverance is key. Nothing is insurmountable, given enough time and will. People will try to stop you. They'll hurt you. They'll trick you. They'll demoralize you, cheat you. They'll throw every cheap trick they have up their sleeves at you. But those are not the only people that are out there. For every trusty Patches out there, you'll find a Solaire of Astora. Someone who will help pick you up when you fall, pat you on the back, and say, "This time we go together, friend." It's vitally important to find people like this in your travels. People who genuinely care about you and are there to lift you up when needed. Life is difficult enough by itself. No one should have to face it alone. If you complete Solaire's questline in Dark Souls 1, he will actually be with you for the entire length of your journey. He seems to pop up everywhere in the world, and he's always got words of encouragement, and he's always ready to help you with whatever problem you're currently having. He is the most summonable phantom in the game by far, and one of the times that you can summon him is even for Ornstein and Smo, who are often regarded as one of, if not the biggest roadblocks in the entire game. It is by far the toughest fight you will have encountered up until that point, and I don't think it's a coincidence that that's one of the fights you can summon Solaire for. You'll even get the chance to return his kindness later, saving Solaire from being tricked by the brain-eating worms in Lost Izalith. After a long and arduous journey, at the end of the world, you'll stand shoulder to shoulder with your friend as you face the one who is ultimately responsible for all of the suffering that you've seen until this point. If you finish Solaire's questline, he goes on to link the flame in his own world. If it weren't for you and your friendship, Solaire would never make it there. He needed you as a friend to complete his journey, and maybe you needed him just as much. Not everyone is quite so lucky, though. While you and Solaire can live to see the end of the journey, not everyone you meet will. Some of them fall to temptation, becoming just as despicable as the ones who are responsible for this whole mess to begin with. Some will give their lives valiantly, making the ultimate sacrifice so that you can carry on, and some will simply fail, despite giving their all. But that's why we carry on, so that we can remember those who have fallen. Their story has ended now, but they live on within us. We must see the journey to the end, for their sake, just as much as our own. Now, maybe you think I'm reaching. Maybe you think that all of this is just me having my perspective warped on the game by my own past experiences with depression and anxiety, and you could easily be right. I'm not discounting it, especially since I don't think I've ever seen anyone else bring this up before, or at least not in such plain terms, like it's one of the main themes of the story. I do genuinely believe this, by the way. I can't help but see these clear parallels between my life and the things that happen in-game. Obviously, I never had to kill the gaping dragon so that I could go see the doctor and get some anxiety medication or anything. But, you know, that's the cool thing about media, isn't it? Is that it's able to take a concept from reality and then show you it in such grand and exaggerated terms that it really just brings the whole thing into such clear focus. It makes me very sad to see so many people online who want to play these games, but they get scared away because the game's reputation intimidates them. I think it's just a terrible tragedy that that happens to so many people, because I think the people who are afraid of the series are the ones who would benefit the most from experiencing them. If you're one of those people who did get scared away, I would implore you to at least give one of the games a try. Any of them, they all stand up well on their own, they all carry the same underlying message. Can't guarantee you'll like them, can't guarantee you'll beat it, and I can't guarantee that you'll see it the same way as I. Obviously. But I do know that you owe it to yourself to at least give it a try. Thanks for watching.